From New Jersey, this is Low Fidelity. I'm Jeff Heller.
And I'm Mike Labrie. On this episode, we will be reviewing Thriller by Michael Jackson.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to our first episode. We are hoping that what we do with this new format works well. And of course, we're looking forward to any feedback that you have about it. So I do want to share something that we did not have ready in the first episode, and that was our YouTube channel. So now we have the YouTubes to have further syndication of our lovely fan-made.
So we're calling it syndication?
Yeah, I guess.
It's out there. You can listen to it a variety of ways. You want it, and I want it, and we want it to be convenient for people. Because who knows where you're listening to stuff. I've always talked about how I have a long commute. I listen in the car. I listen at the gym. Wherever you are, whenever you are, we're here for you.
Exactly. And so that's why next time when we do this, we're going to have like a one-sentence thing that will...
Here, I'm going to do it for you right now. Lo-fi. Internet. Go.
Thank you very much for that, Mike. So now we get to the obligatory part of this episode where we have to kind of just put a disclaimer out there that we are not professors of music and that we are doing this for fun.
I'm glad you're starting it. I talked a little bit about in the first episode, I don't know if you want to call it the first half, but the intro, the reboot of part 3, where the way I described it is, I don't want to say I'm going to be the color commentator, but for many of these album reviews, kind of going to be along the way. There is no way that you and I can be experts on everything there is in music. Music, it's too large. There may be specific areas. You want to talk to me about New Brunswick music in 1999 through 2001, I will talk you under the rug. I'm ready to go. And maybe we'll get to some of those albums in the future. But I think it's especially important when we're talking about something like Michael Jackson's Thriller, which you and I both talked about, again, as we kind of intro the intro, is an album that has existed for as long as the two of us have existed on this earth. We have been aware of it our entire lives, but we were not sentient enough at the time to really understand its social impact on the world, on certain communities. And we're going to try to address it as best we can. We can't. We are two white dudes in our 30s. It's impossible for us to really nail everything.
So having said all that, Mike, what we ask for you specifically to do is, of course, feel welcome to disagree with us.
Oh, challenge us. I love a good challenge. Go for it.
We have many ways for you to do that. We mentioned Twitter, Reddit, a lot of places that we exist. Please feel free to comment on any of the episodes with what you feel could have been done better or facts that you feel were misrepresented. We are more than happy to hear that and get the record straight. Having said that, please be respectful and do understand that we are not spending 24 hours a day researching this stuff. We are doing what we can within a month to get ready for recording. We are going to get things wrong. We rely on you to set us right, but everybody's assuming positive intent here, so please do it respectfully. Otherwise, don't be surprised when we kick you out for being disrespectful. I think that's fair, right?
Absolutely. People who know me, you summed up me well, so.
Beautiful.
Great.
Okay, so with that out of the way, let's go on to our album review of Michael Jackson's Thriller. So unless you were born after June 2009 or you've been living under a rock since the 70s, 80s, 90s, Michael Jackson is an extremely popular American singer, dancer, entertainer. He is known as the King of Pop. He originally started his musical career with his brothers in the Jackson 5, and they had a number of hits for Motown. He went solo and did a number of successful solo albums, leading up to Off the Wall, which was released in 1979, more of an R&B disco-flavored album.
Yeah, Jeff, I just want to jump in there because I know for me and for a lot of people, they actually think of Off the Wall as his first album, which is really interesting because he had some solo album before that on a different label though, and under a different kind of like creative empire. But there's kind of like this very distinct break with Off the Wall. So you kind of have like these three eras. I'm not a total Michael Jackson scholar, but I kind of feel like there's three eras of Michael Jackson. There's Jackson 5, there's pre-label change, there's post-label change.
Yes, I think that's absolutely worth bringing up, especially because in terms of this section I call required listening, things that I suggest you listen to before tackling Thriller from a critical perspective, really Off the Wall should be the first thing you listen to, which came out that was August 10th, 1979. Off the Wall had 4 top 10 singles on it. I mean, this was not a small release. He did very well with this. He won a Grammy for, I think it was Best R&B, but of course for Michael Jackson, it's not enough, right?
Yep.
Also worth mentioning on Off the Wall, this is the first time he partnered with Quincy Jones, a very famous producer, and him specifically I also recommend as required listening to listen to his album The Dude, which was released in 1981. So you're kind of seeing what Quincy Jones kind of brings into Thriller,
right,
and the kind of technique techniques that he would employ. I find the dude, I actually have listened to the dude a lot since I was a kid. It was actually in our household. We listened to this album more than Thriller.
Wow.
There's some great songs on there. I Know Karita is the one that I put up on our Reddit and Twitter feed just to get people primed for the kind of production style that Quincy Jones has. It's a very good representation of that style. So that is something very important that I feel provides a bit more sonic context to Thriller. And then the last thing I feel is very useful when it comes to listening to Thriller is the album 4 from Toto. You're going to see a lot of personnel from Toto showing up in Thriller. And I think that this isn't really all that coincidental. I mean, the album kind of has this rock bent, and we're going to get into more detail about the genre spanning that Thriller takes. It's interesting to hear how some of those people bring in their own style into Thriller. So I absolutely recommend all 4 of those albums. Give them a listen. Very interesting to see how that all leads up to Thriller.
Now, obviously, there's a lot more to say about Michael Jackson and his career, especially the tail, I don't want to say the tail end, but leading up toward the tail end in a post-Dangerous world, I guess you'd say, about his personal life, about his career, about the track both of those took. When we talk about Thriller, none of that is particularly relevant just yet. We're going to get a little bit of the, hey, everyone's talking about me, there's shut up, don't worry about it in some of this music. And that's going to continue for several more albums. But it's the elephant in the room, and I think it's important to address. Let's just leave it at that. We're going to talk about Thriller here.
What a great segue into track 1 of Thriller, Wanna Be Starting Something.
Yeah, exactly, right?
I mean, that is a perfect way to get into this. I found that for starting an album like Thriller that sells millions and millions of copies, to start this album off with a track as fiery as Wanna Be Starting Something, because I mean, it really just goes to 11 right off the bat with this great dance beat.
Yep.
And these
you got disco, you got funk, you're dancing over here. It's got a little bit of everything.
And some really cool studio tricks to start with, like the fact that just right at the beginning when you hear the bass going off, you hear Michael singing along with the bass before he takes the vocal. And I mean, just those little tricks, right off the bat, it makes it very exciting. And the quality of the recording is so good all throughout this album.
Yeah.
But we're really going to hear it here. Now, I really like Wanna Be Starting Something because the lyrics in this are very closely tied to experiences he's had dealing with fame. And if you want to give this album something of a theme, it's kind of hard to say that there's some kind of, overall theme that summarizes all the tracks.
Yeah, we have so much to talk about when we talk about this album as a whole, but I think pieces are going to jump in as we go throughout these songs here.
So, Mike, I want to think about what brought up the end of the track, because we know the motivation behind a lot of the lyrics. I mean, there's really 5 verses in the song. They all deal with certain scenarios. At some point, I mean, he gets pretty angry at the press and is saying things like, you're doing this because you want to feed your baby. Well, your baby's dying because you're doing these horrible things to feed that kid.
You want to talk about media criticism for the ages. I mean, this is applicable in all eras. And that's not an attack on the media. Like, I don't want to go down that route here, but yeah, absolutely.
But then what brings up that last part of the song? Because he says this inspiring thing like, I believe in me, you believe in you, right? I mean, hugely inspirational. And then all of a sudden we get this mama say, mama san, mama kusa. Why?
Right. Right. I was wondering if you wanted to address that here with the sampling / stealing of the lyrics there.
Well, I don't know what to think about that, because it's a great anthem. There's no doubting that. It sounds great.
It's such a wonderful flow and feel if you are not paying attention to the lyrics. And that's the thing I do like about Michael Jackson songs is they stand alone. If he was just humming every word, they would be as perfect as they are. That's the thing about this song is if you tune out the lyrics, everything is perfect. I think that contrast there is just... Was it just one of those studio session kind of things where it's like this worked here, put together, it all sounds great? Was there not enough of a separation of let's sit back, reflect on this composition as a whole, beginning to end? And this is, again, another very surface level thing. I saw that the majority of this album was recorded a very short time span. And by the time it was done being recorded, it was actually released later that same month. That is absurd to me. Even in this era of completely democratized bureaucratized recording, editing, producing. Any of the bands I follow, they say they're done with something and it's not out for another year, even if they're self-publishing. And I'm thinking of the King of Pop was done recording an album and it was on store shelves later that same month.
And this is after they had an issue where the first mix was so disappointing that, I mean, Michael Jackson was in tears because, you know, it didn't sound anything like they wanted.
Dozens of edits on songs. Yeah.
Yes, right. And I mean, just to explain the science of that real quick. So they were printing straight to vinyl, and the more music that you put on a vinyl record, the thinner the grooves get, and the thinner they get, the worse the sound gets, essentially. So they were listening to the final mix and were just devastated because of how the sound just wasn't up to their own standards. And so they had to go back into the editing stage and cut so much off. And I think that's a very important point to bring up because this song probably could have been like 10 minutes long, just with that last part alone. I mean, it goes on for an extended period.
Right.
And Michael Jackson's got some great ad-libbing on top of it. That melody is just fantastic and the lyrics just sound good, but it must have been cut down from a longer state because we get this at a pretty long shot to begin with. But really the question that I have about this line is this isn't an original. Right. It was taken from a song called Soul Makossa from an artist called Manu Dibango. And this song was actually, but I butchered that pronunciation, by the way.
I was listening to the song the other day, amazingly, for the first time myself, having known for decades at this point that this was not an original thing somehow. Maybe not decades, I don't know. But having known for a while that that was not an original concept, I listened to the original here, and yeah, the basis is there, but I really feel like it was transformed just enough to feel like an original creation. Yeah, it was taken from there. No one's going to deny it. In fact, it was not denied in several court sessions. But
yeah, right. Litigation did happen. Yeah,
it was there. But it was transformed. It was made into his own.
What I found interesting about this was this brings out how much of a disco nerd Michael Jackson was.
Yeah.
And I'm referencing a particular interview I saw with him next to the owner of Studio 54. And he's got the huge afro. And these reporters are talking to him about like, so what do you like about Studio 54? And he's like,
it's where you come when you want to escape. It's really escapism.
And like, it was just this really entertaining interview. And I'm like, you're such a nerd. Like you're, and so he's talking about how he loves Studio 54 over all these other discotheques, meaning he's been to all these other discotheques and listening to the music. So it only makes sense to me that he pulled this out because this song happened to be in the proto disco clubs. It was kind of a staple.
Yeah.
So for him to take that as influence, I mean, I think that's absolutely valid.
What do you want to talk about in terms of this song and maybe one other song feeling like, oh, this could have been on Off the Wall?
Oh, what other song do you feel should have been on Off the Wall?
Probably Pretty Young Thing. I feel like those two, they're the perfect bridges. I want to say I read that Startin' Something was actually conceived of during that time frame, those recording sessions. That makes sense. But I mean, this is another thing. Talk about Michael Jackson. I actually always forget what the albums were and when they came out. I always insert an extra album in between somewhere around Bad that doesn't exist because I feel like there are all these bridges between them because you're primarily thinking, I think most people are, about all the singles. And when you try to place them on what album was that one on, and when you consider how long singles ran for back in the 70s and 80s like this, and how long these songs and these albums were on the charts, your mind doesn't really wrap around that well here in 2017. And so this is just one of those perfect album bridges that I think worked on a variety of levels and definitely as the first track for this album.
You know, that's a good point because he did have a lot of projects between Thriller and Bad. He had a lot of projects between Bad and Dangerous.
Right.
It did dry up at some point, but for an example, when he was doing Thriller, or no, right before Thriller, they got approached by Steven Spielberg to do the E.T. tracks. You know, they were already stressed for time anyway.
E.T., Wiz, you've got Captain EO in there somewhere around. I mean, there's so much going on with Michael Jackson.
Yeah, it was, I mean, that I guess is sort of the downside of oversaturation maybe, but it just shows how prolific he was as an artist to have all these different things.
A totally separate conversation. In the year 2017, we don't have pop icons like this anymore. It is impossible to tell a child in this day and age what it was like to have someone that prolific. That 66 million copies does not make sense to anyone anymore.
Well, selling an album doesn't really make sense to young kids these
one
days either.
sale doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah, right.
It's a totally separate conversation, but I kind of want to insert it here as we're getting this album going. Just there is no way to really comprehend just how massive he was.
No, there really isn't, just with the amount of projects he had. Though I do want to just say about p.y.t, yeah, it really does kind of have that bridging feel from Off the Wall to here, just for being more dance-ish, if you will. But I would also argue that Baby Be Mine and the last track kind of feels that way too, because in terms of how they sound, I mean, they are sort of more focused on their existing genres, things that Michael Jackson's already done before.
Yeah,
because
they feel familiar.
So there's a connection there, and I think that's a good point, because it does show that he's not completely off track, and I feel like he can't do that because a lot of listeners of Thriller who were there for Off the Wall would be alienated from this. I mean, well, 66 million. I'm sure 1 million of that is Off the Wall fans, but
I do want to have just kind of one last thought about the lyrical content of the song before we move on. You mentioned Baby Be Mine. We should get into that. But what I like about the lyrics of Startin' Something, and the thing here is it doesn't come across as completely self-serving. Even though it is, it still feels really honest to me. And I think that's something really difficult to pull off, is that it doesn't sound like, oh, poor me, woe is me, I'm so popular, there's so much going on in my life. It actually feels like a honest to God, this is stupid. Can you just stop? Like, what are we even doing here? I believe him here.
Especially, he's very upset about this, as you can tell from the lyrics. But that's what makes that last verse, I think, so
bizarre.
Well, not bizarre, but I actually think it's so effective. Is because he's stating problems, but then in the last verse, he's saying what you can do if you face those problems, which is believe in yourself. That's all that matters.
Sure.
So don't let it get to you, because that's just what fame is. But you believe in yourself. That's all that matters. And then here's a great anthem to sing it off with, right? So
okay, yeah, I can say here's the anthem. We're going.
Yeah, exactly. And that last verse is sung in a different register. It's sung the melody's different, and that's what I think is very effective about it. And I actually really enjoy that part of the song, is the fact that there is a moral to it and that he delivers it with such impact. That's what I think makes it work so well. So that makes this weird to transition into a song like Baby Be Mine.
Doesn't it? I know.
Where, I mean, we're not getting anything, arguably, I don't find anything lyrically interesting here. And I see this happening with some of the other tracks where I'm getting the standard, you and I are such a great pair, we're a love tale for the ages. Okay, I've heard that.
Been there, done that. Yeah.
Been there, done that.
The weird thing about this song is that I always end up liking it more than I think I'm going to every time I listen to the album.
I agree with you.
But I also think this isn't the right place for it in the track listing, or maybe it is, because where the hell else do you put it? And also, I have nothing to say about it.
That's a good point.
It's an enigma of a song.
Right. Well, it wasn't released as a single. I think we can both see why that's the case. It's certainly not as dynamic as the other tracks.
At some point, they may as well have just put out all 9 as singles. I mean, what was stopping them at that point? They could have.
Yeah, right. I got to mention that my favorite thing about this track is how you can hear his vocals like just straining at the amount of force that he's putting into the power behind the lyrics.
Yeah.
So even though the lyrics themselves don't really share anything all that new or interesting, his performance is just stunning here. And so I actually really love that part of this track more than anything else, is just listening to how he tackles something that's so tried and true.
You know where I want to go with this song, and this applies to a lot of other songs, but because I don't have as much to say about this one, I want to bring it up here. And this is kind of a Michael Jackson standard, is that he, other than a few small cases, like later in p.y.t, he does all of his own background vocals, like the do baby be mine. Like, he's the one doing that. And I really feel like these songs would have a lot more depth. Listen to me criticizing Thriller in 2017. These songs would have a lot more depth. I'm not necessarily looking for big name guest stars like we're about to get to, but just to have a different tone of voice doing that background performance, it feels like the Michael Jackson show. And I know that's literally the point of this album, but at some point it becomes a little much to me. And I think because I have nothing else to say about this song, this is where it strikes me the most.
I think that's a great segue over to the next track, which is The Girl Is Mine.
Okay, so we'll just go there.
Let's just go there, because this is the first single from Thriller.
All right, you have 2 songs with the word mine back to back. I think it's another big problem with this track listing.
That's a very good point. So this is featuring Paul McCartney. At this point, they've already been friends.
Right.
It's well documented. There's something I find particularly interesting here in the drums that I want to get to. But before we do that, I just want to say I fight with this song.
It's super sweet and all.
Yeah, and it's very interesting how the lyrics are structured, because it starts off with Paul McCartney taking a verse, Michael Jackson taking a verse, and it just like converges as the song goes on. They start sort of interrupting each other at the end.
Yeah.
And so I do like that, where, sort of the subliminal way of saying these are two figures, but now they're kind of starting to have this direct conflict. Mm-hmm. And it's so funny that this happens because it's so obvious that the girl's playing both of them. But, here they are arguing over this girl. I have to say, though, that, some of that dialogue was just atrocious to listen to in this day and age.
Yeah, the thing I wanted to bring up was, I know Michael Jackson was an amazing entertainer and he would do acting, but his quote unquote acting in this song is completely unbelievable. And Paul McCartney is like halfway there, and Michael Jackson's,
Paul, I think I told you, I'm a lover, not a fighter.
I can't. No.
Yeah.
I don't believe you. You're not acting. You're reading your lines and you're smiling your way through them.
And that's what makes me question, like, this was the first single. I can imagine, and I've seen it read too, that a lot of people were saying, well, if this is the first single, then I wonder what the rest of the album's going to be like.
Right. And this definitely gets into some of the social commentary of the day, I think, that our old buddy Willie on Reddit was actually starting to challenge us on. I definitely appreciate that. How can we comment on Michael Jackson's and Thriller's
racial impact?
Yeah. And this was the safe lead-in for pop music on the mainstream scale. And it's a little bit gross. I see what they were doing, but it's not representative of the album of Michael Jackson. It's super weird to me, but
it is.
I see what they were doing.
It is. And, we're going to talk about how they correct that with the second single in a bit. All right, let's talk about Thriller, Mike.
Well, Jeff, this is the Monster Mash.
Yes, it is.
This is the weirdest thing about this song to me. It is the cheesiest song. It has the most, I don't have any other word. It is just so simple and cheesy, but it's absolutely true and honest at the same time. And it's hard to think about this song being a normal contemporary single because it just sounds like a children's song.
I could see that. Yeah. Like, how do you take it seriously when they're saying, it's hard to run away from the thing with 40 eyes?
Well, here's the weird thing about the song, and this is what I'm only just now, I think, grasping, and I should have come to this conclusion, 20 years ago in my life. The music video changed what this song is actually about, because the song isn't about funny horror and monsters and stuff. It's a song about a boy and a girl, just like every other song on this album. It's basically him saying, I got you, don't worry, I can love you better than anyone else. It don't matter if there are ghosts over here, I got you. But I think every single person, when you hear Thriller, you think about the zombies dancing in the music video, and that colors everything you think about this song.
So there's this term that I say so often nowadays, and that's ubiquity. It used to be context, now it's ubiquity.
Sure.
Basically because, especially in a case like Thriller, I couldn't agree more. When I think of the song, I think of the video. I don't necessarily think of how it appears on this album. That's why when we get to is it the bridge? Yeah, when we get to the bridge, it's so weird. Like,
Right. We all know the song from the video more than we know the album version.
In fact, if you look at a lot of the comments on the music video, people tend to say, I enjoy this mix of the song better than the album version.
Yeah.
And that's so funny because, yes, the album version is just, it's a bit odd.
It is. I don't like the chorus that early.
No, I don't either.
And that's the music video shaping me, but I like that we get a little bit more of the scenario there before we jump into the chorus.
I absolutely agree with that. Now, there's a very, very big topic about Thriller that I want to cover at this point, and that is there's this great opening to Thriller. Above everything else that we feel is kind of weird about it, the opening of it, I feel, is very dynamic because we're starting with some minor chords and, things are kind of gearing up to something big, and then we're hit with this anthem right at the beginning, which is so...
Oh man, I love everything about it.
So I want to break that down from a theory perspective, just to talk about why this thing is so energizing and what makes it this great anthem to start off the track. Okay, so to talk about the theory behind Thriller, I'm going to bring out some terms and I'm going to define them as best I can. Keep in mind that I am just learning this stuff, so I'm probably going to miss things that people are going to rail on me for not mentioning. So in case I do miss something, take that opportunity to write to us on Reddit or any number of ways that you can give us feedback. But let me take it from here. The first thing to know about Thriller is that we are in the key of C sharp. If you know the major scale or the minor scale, it has a certain set of notes. And this doesn't really use either of those two scales. It uses something called the Dorian mode. And this is what a C sharp Dorian mode sounds like. And Mike, I think you can pick it out here too, where it doesn't sound like one particular happy, quote unquote, or sad connotation. It just kind of sort of has a mixture of both, right?
Yeah, it's just a strange series of notes, but it doesn't really jump out at you.
To be more specific, if I just listen to the first three notes here, I mean, that to me sounds minor. It sounds kind of downtrodden to start, but then it kind of hints in a major direction. And then at the end, kind of comes off a little ambiguous. This mode is what Thriller sits in, but it's not really that clear listening to the notes in an ascending order. So let's listen to them in a descending order. Okay, so...
Oh, you just wait for that dun at the end.
Yes, we'll talk about tension and release there as we get into this. But descending, that sounds more like Thriller to me. Let's take a look at that anthemic opening line to Thriller. If we take a look at just the top part of the harmony here, that top line is the first four descending notes of the C sharp Dorian scale. Okay, so the top part of the melody, not really all that interesting. It's just starting from the C sharp and going down three more notes.
Okay.
How do you add bass to that? Because you've got the first four notes going down. Let's just say we take this top melody and we make every other note parallel to that. The way that we're progressing down the scale is parallel, all heading in a descending direction. Here's what it sounds like. I think we could both make the argument that that is nowhere near as dynamic as the actual chorus or the actual anthem, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's
So
not
what
all
is
that
it about it?
Okay, so let's look at the bass by itself. Now, what's interesting about this is that the bass is sort of ascending, but then it goes back to the C sharp. Now, let's get into some terminology here. The C sharp of the song is known as the tonic. That means that this is the bass note of, or the key, if you will. The key of the song is C sharp. We hear the C sharp in the beginning, and then at the end, we hear it return back to the C sharp. So that's this nice sort of tension release type of thing, because we're heading in a direction, but we're going back home. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is let's go into the harmony now. We're going to talk about how the top and the bottom work together, chord by chord. So here is the first chord of the chorus. They're both the same exact key. It's a C sharp.
Okay.
But it's a C sharp in different octaves.
Got it. Okay. So it's not the harmony here we're talking about. It's literally the same note, just up and down the scale there.
Yeah, there's still a harmony to it.
Sure.
But it's very subdued.
Okay.
It's not dramatic, but it's an establishing chord because we're hearing the same pitch in two different octaves. Now the next chord is much more dynamic, and this is what's called a perfect fifth. If we were to play notes ascending from the tonic up to this fifth note, here's what it sounds like. And then combine them, it's super harmonic, right? Sounds beautiful.
Yep.
And it's so much more dramatic when you compare it to the first chord. So let's listen to the first two in that regard. A lot more drama. We go into the third chord, and that's not a very pleasing chord, right?
No, not at all.
You don't want to sit on that, but I'm going to...
You want to use it.
You want and you want to go somewhere with it. And the fact that I'm delaying us from the fourth chord is kind of bringing in that tension. You want me to finish. You want that resolve, right? So how does it resolve? Like this. That is another perfect fifth, but now it's a perfect fifth in the C sharp.
Got it.
It's like an anthem, right? Because it starts with an establishing chord, it gets very harmonic, it then goes to a moment of tenseness, and then it resolves back at the tonic. So it's this complete thought from beginning to end. There's a lot of composers who they don't make fun of this kind of structure, but they do kind of think of it as pretty simplistic because, you know, if you're going to go to something that's establishing and then you go to something high dramatic and then you go back to something establishing, yeah, I mean, it's like a story. You know, you have your exposition, your climax, and then your finale, right? It's that in music. What I want to do with this is I want to bring in the idea that Rod Temperton, the songwriter behind Thriller, kind of knew about this. So what I want to do is I want to bring in some of the other songs from before Thriller in the disco era that use the same exact structure with some slight variations.
Okay.
Let's listen to a song from Boney M. This one is called Rasputin, and you'll hear exactly what I'm talking about in the chorus. It's very easy to see this as being an influence. This was a huge hit in Europe.
Wow.
And now in this case, it's a little different because here it returns to the tonic in a higher octave. So the bass keeps going up and the vocals keep going down.
Got it.
So it's this convergence of notes, if you will. Now that's how they decide to do it. Let's go to an even bigger disco anthem. And this one is Donna Summer's I Feel Love, produced by Giorgio Moroder. The difference they did here, everybody takes the same theme, but they do something different with that last note. And here it happens where it's the first three chords are the same, but in that last one, the vocal melody goes up as well as the bass, and it creates another minor chord, which is increasing the tension, but that's resolved by the first chord. And you know what happens when you do that? You create a cyclical...
Yeah, you get a loop there.
You get a loop.
Sure.
Because you can't get resolution unless you go back to the first chord.
You got to just keep going over and over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, why do I feel that Rod Temperton was well aware of this and probably did it on purpose, or at least kind of had a feeling that this would work for Thriller in this case? Well, Quincy Jones's album, The Dude, as I mentioned before, is a great exhibition of what Quincy was doing before Thriller came around. Rod Temperton writes a lot for Quincy Jones. If we go to the last track of The Dude, Turn on the Action, let's see if we can trace this progression down to that song as well. So there you go. There's Rod Temperton using the same exact technique. The bass is going up in key as the top melody is going downward, hitting the same kind of structure as what we've just been looking at in Thriller. So he's done this thing before. He's well aware of what he's doing. I have a feeling that if he wasn't thinking, oh, let's do this again for this because it needs something anthemic, it's a very happy coincidence that this very dramatic structure works so well in both places.
Yeah, and you can see Michael Jackson coming in saying, this is how I'm going to harmonize with myself. This is how I'm going to structure and layer these vocals. Probably a happy coincidence, but also conscious at the same time.
If you talk to any music theorist, this is not the most interesting part. This is the boring part because this kind of, it's a pop music formula. We hear it all the time. What they're going to pick out is what comes up later in the song at the end of the chorus. Trying to break this thing down, I'm not going to attempt it. I'm not there yet, but I do want to show it off because it is pretty interesting to hear this sort of disorienting chord change. I mean, the resolve on that, I do feel that that is a lot more interesting, but far be it for me to explain how that works. If you want to get more detail about it, I found that on Reddit. The music theory subreddit is really fascinating. Plenty of geekdom going on in there, but some really good explanations to some of the hidden magic in a lot of these songs. So there you go. That's my music theory geekdom taking over there for a second just to describe that. I think we need to talk about Vincent Price.
Yeah, we're 4 songs in. We're on our second major guest appearance here. It's great. It's cheesy. It's appropriate. I hate to use this word. It's a little bit cringeworthy at times, just like some of the banter between Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney. terrorize y'all's neighborhood.
Yeah, it's a bit odd, but you know, at the same time, I mean, this is kind of giving us that cheesy 50s horror vibe.
Right.
So who
right.
better than Vincent Price to end the track?
You have to.
You have to. And if it wasn't him, it would be Lord of the Rings guy. What's his name? Christopher Lee. I mean, he could have done that as well.
You know what I like about the song, Jeff, is that it actually has an ending. It's not a fade out. It has a very distinct end point to the song. I like that a lot.
You know, that's a good point you bring that up, because the sound effects are a very big part of this, especially in the beginning. I mean, we have to deal with like 20 seconds of sound effects before we get to anything resembling a musical note.
Yeah.
So, but you hear the opening door, and at the end of the song, you hear the closing door.
Yeah, it's
what a nice way to
very
summarize
standard
it.
Opening and ending, but it makes total sense. It's not just another 20-second fade out. I appreciate that about this song.
I do.
What else do you say about Thriller, man? It's so tough, because what I want to talk about with music videos, if we can kind of interject real briefly here. I was at the right age when Dangerous came out, that I remember black or white and remember the time as the late night prime time. They were events. These were the things you didn't necessarily need to stay up to watch, but they were the must-see TV moments. They were the Super Bowl of Michael Jackson's releasing a new music video. We're all going to watch it at the same time. And Thriller had just been ubiquitous, like you said. All the music videos from this album, I just knew. So I had that history leading up to when the Dangerous videos came around. It's so hard, because that video took the song and gave it a life of its own, separate from what I think the song definitely is in and of itself. I don't even know how to phrase it, man.
Well, I think a good way to look at this is look at it from the angle of how successful this album became because of the music videos.
Right.
And not just the music itself. Because as we just said, Thriller as a song, I mean, I had something I really enjoyed about it. Obviously, I shared that. But other than that, it's kind of weird. The arranging isn't that great. But when you think about the song, you don't really think about the album version. You think of the music video.
Yeah.
I mean, that's on purpose. You know, the fact that the music video was just so incredible. I mean, it had a huge budget. It had a big Hollywood director, John Landis, right? You know, it had everything right to make this a short film, or I think it was a mini movie is what Jackson would call it.
Yeah.
Not a music video.
Right.
But because the art form was so new at that time, right? MTV had just been around since '81, so this is like still within the beginning.
We're on the cusp of the format, yeah. And I'm sorry, I can't be as articulate as I would want to be about this song, but I'm thinking about the video. I'm like, I haven't watched it in a while. Can we stop recording so I can go watch the video? Like, that's how I feel right now.
How do you hear the song and not think of the shoulder twitch or the head, throw
exactly
up and down?
Exactly where your mind goes, for sure.
Now, granted, Mike, let's kind of bring in another one of our favorite things to do in life, and that is go on cruises. And on pretty much every cruise we've been on, they have the Thriller dance-off that they do with
every Halloween event everywhere. I mean, it's just a part of American culture to this day.
Yeah, exactly.
And worldwide culture.
Let's talk about Beat It. Track 5.
Yeah.
Another single. I mean, most of these are singles, of course, but I think Beat It is a particularly interesting track because...
this one had a purpose. They had a goal for this song. They wanted to do, what would a rock song from Michael Jackson sound like? Well, yep, you nailed it, 110%. Yep, that's a Michael Jackson rock song.
So, I mean, a really good rock track to, again, span through different genres of music here. And it's very effective. The lyrics, on the other hand, I find to be astonishingly contrast to the point of the music.
Yeah.
Right? Because you listen to the music and it's this hard edge. You're thinking of like spike gloves and like a big fight. And
this is where I want to talk about lyrical content, Jeff, because we're definitely getting into the era of Michael Jackson and all of his family. You want to talk about social justice writing, Rhythm Nation. It's going to be hot on its heels in a few years. This is Michael Jackson talking about culture, and he has a lot to say. I don't think he's the one that should be saying it at this point, because all of the lyrics, they're so direct, they're so honest. There's no subtlety to any of the writing. I can't believe you're using such simple words to talk about such an important issue. It's really weird to me. And yet the musical composition and arrangement has that edge that gives it more credibility of a message than I think the lyrics deserve.
Well, I would argue only that maybe I'm seeing it from a different perspective. I actually thought of it more as a passive response to someone leading into confrontation.
It's definitely about like gang activity and being just the machismo kind of nonsense. Yeah, but the words that are used to talk about it, I just feel it's too simple, and I can't believe the message the way it's being delivered to me.
I wonder if the reason why that is has to do with the fact that this is a pop album. right?
Yeah, sure.
And so things have to be, I don't want to say dumbed down. That's not really the best way to describe this, but rather it does have to be simplistic because of the massive audience this thing is going to end up, reaching across, where, translating the lyrics to the song are not really going to end up lost in translation. It's going to be pretty straightforward no matter how you listen to it. I see it as being ineffective because of how simplistic it is, where it's like, don't get involved with this, just run. It's fine, They're out to kill you. This isn't something you want to mess with. Just beat it. Go.
Yeah.
But the thing that really strikes out to me is just how different that is from the tone of the music.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's saying
the music definitely feels like get in there and fight.
And especially with the solo. And if we think back to the music video, even, they start fighting.
Right.
Well,
and he gets in the middle. He didn't run away. He got in there.
He got in there, yes. Although, granted, they're dance fighting. They're not real fighting.
No, there's some...
It's symbolism,
fake
right?
Knife fighting.
Yeah, it's symbolism.
Well, there's the symbolism. It's not here in the lyrics. I'm being really hard on the lyrics. I'm reviewing them one last time. I'm like, all right, maybe they're not as bad as I think they are. But I think when you're listening to it with the music, it almost makes them worse than they really are with how much of an edge the music has.
But you know what? I think that I don't want to say double meaning, but the fact that there's multiple angles to this is why I enjoy a lot of these songs.
Yeah.
Want to Be Starting Something has a definite point to it. The music is a lot happier than really it should be given the lyrics.
Yeah, the contrast makes it interesting, doesn't it?
It does. It absolutely does. But that's why I love a lot of the lyrics on here, even though, we don't really look at Michael Jackson as a lyrical source. We look at him for his dancing, his performance, his, the words that come out of his mouth. Yeah, the way he expresses himself is not in the lyrics usually. So
that's definitely going to transition over the years into the pop, pop. Like that's what I want to hear. I don't want to hear your words. I want to hear your sound effects.
We're going to talk about the ad-libbing in a bit. But two things.
Did you like my impression there, by the way?
Oh, that was beautiful.
Right.
Yeah, beautiful.
Michael Jackson is here among us.
So, but let me talk about two particular things that I really do enjoy about the arrangement here.
Yeah.
The first thing, one lyrical thing, one musical thing.
Okay.
The backing vocal in the choruses are these, it's choral. It's like,
yes.
It's so interesting to hear that, again, in a rock song.
Yep.
But, it just gives it this great heft of emotion that comes out of nowhere. And again, Quincy, come on. I know Michael Jackson wrote this one, and so maybe it's his idea to put the vocals, the backing vocals in there in the chorus, but just the effect that they have, that's actually why I returned to the song. If it wasn't for them, I would not be interested in this song at all. This is actually one of my least favorite songs on the album.
You're crazy. This is one of the best songs ever recorded, Jeff. I'm being so down on it, and yet I think this is up there in the pantheon.
What I really enjoy is the chorus, because he says, beat it, no one wants to be defeated. That rhyme, I never heard that. When I remember this track back as a kid, and I always thought it was beat it, no one wants to beat it. Like I always thought it was that.
That's definitely, yeah.
That's what it sounds like. And then I looked up the lyrics to this and I saw no one wants to be defeated. Like that's great. That's an incredible rhyming structure. It's too bad it kind of gets swallowed up in the production, but that's a really good line.
I think that's part of it though. I think that's what they were going for, is they wanted it to sound that way.
Oh yeah.
You want to talk about getting eaten up. It's eaten up by the next line, showing how funky and strong is your fight. Lost me.
Yeah, okay. All right, Mike, let's go to, I think, what should also be an elephant in the room, and that is the monstrosity. Well, not monstrosity, it's gorgeous monstrosity that is the second single, and really the track that blew up everything, and that is Billie Jean.
Yeah, I was just talking about Beat It. Oh, it's just an amazing song up in there in the pantheon. Billie Jean, I think, is one of the greatest songs ever recorded.
I absolutely agree with that, and I do think that's why this album propelled itself into legendary status.
Yeah, yeah.
And a very good choice for a second single, considering they had to do much better than the first. But, there's so much to unpack with this.
Let's start at the beginning. It's such a simple instrumentation. You've got a drum, you got a hi-hat, you get the bass line that comes in, and then you get some, oh my God, it's so simple, but it's so effective.
And something, apparently, of all the things Quincy Jones didn't like about this song, that is certainly one of the things he didn't like, was just how long the opening was. And, he wants to get to things quick, and Michael's like, no.
It doesn't feel that way to me.
No, it doesn't to me either. I feel like the way that Michael had it in his head was exactly the way it came out on record, and it's brilliant.
Just the right length, yeah.
Just the right length, and it sets up all the themes, and we hear this bass, and again, just like Want to Be Starting Something, we hear him vocalizing on top of the synth line. There's a lot of things, I got to give credit to this album. Again, Quincy, where there's so many things here where I'm thinking, oh, synthesizer, but it's not. It's vocals, it's horns, it's something in there that's actually doing the lines where other artists would have done a synthesizer and been done with it. They do a pure audio source that just gives it so much more of an acoustic heft. And so we'll get maybe into the engineering a little bit later, but I just feel like, again, here with that starting vocalization on top of what sounds like a synth line, I mean, that's just a nice touch. We get this atmosphere that's very film noir, the different instrumentation happening, and then we get to Michael Jackson's vocal, and he is just incredibly soulful. And the way he treats the lyrics is so respectful. Where do you want to start with? Because there's just so much to this.
I want to start with storytelling. I'm a sucker for a story that has a beginning, a middle, and end in a song. This one doesn't even necessarily have an end. The song ends with him still pleading the same thing he's been saying the entire song, so there's really no resolution to it. I love storytelling in music, and it's weird that I don't like country music more than I do, because I feel like that's all storytelling. But this is a wonderful story, Jeff. That's what I like about it, in contrast to all the other songs on the album, where yeah, it's a story about a love thing, but this feels so much more grounded and realistic and topical than any of the other, you're a girl, I'm a boy, aren't we great together?
We're going to have an argument about this, because I listen to the lyrics of this, and I read them, like I said, I'm on this website Genius where they break apart music lyrics.
Yeah.
And I think that the lyrics can be open to interpretation a slight bit. And the way that I interpret them, I actually really don't like the character behind this. I don't want to say I don't like Michael Jackson, because I don't think it's him saying this, even though I keep reading about him saying, oh, the lyrics are based on real things and whatnot. When I listen to the lyrics of this, I'm like, you're a scumbag.
He does kind of sound like a jerk, kind of pleading with, well, I was always told not to be this way, and it just kind of ended up this way, and it's not my fault. But do you side with him? Like, you kind of have to a little bit, right?
No, in fact, I am so mad at this guy, because he's such a scumbag. I mean, the guy is saying that the kid is not his son. Billie Jean's not my lover. Okay, look, what else did you do when it came to dancing in the round? All right. Because you tell me what that means, because my interpretation of it is you slept with her. So not only did you do that and you're constantly saying you didn't do it, but you have a verse in there. There is a verse where the woman comes up to your quote unquote baby, which means that you have someone you're in a relationship with already. Right. Here comes Billie Jean with not just, oh yeah, we at 3 a.m. we danced in the round, but also here's a photo of the kid and those eyes are yours. Are you kidding me? But he still goes on in the chorus to say the kid's not his. You're a scumbag. I was so mad investigating these lyrics. I had never noticed this the entire time that I've been listening to the song until I was doing this review.
Jeff, he's the villain you love to hate. I think that's what I like about this song. I see your face. You totally disagree with me.
No, totally disagree. I don't love him at all. He's a scumbag.
But that's what I love about it. Sometimes you have to have a terrible human being that you sympathize with. This is saying a lot about me. Let's move on to a different subject matter.
Well, I do want to say one thing, just going back to lyrics, just real quick. What I do appreciate about it, I mean, again, going into the subject matter, not a huge fan, but in terms of how the lyrics work, I really enjoy what's called an unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
So I do really appreciate that, because he's constantly arguing with himself. Technically, the chorus is saying one thing, but the verses are telling the truth.
You think he's trying, the point of the song maybe is that he's trying to convince himself that it's not true?
Right, exactly. Maybe that, or
he knows it is.
Right, when he says the lie becomes the truth. I love that line.
There you
because the lie of him not sleeping with Billie Jean turned into the truth of her having his kid.
Or if on the other side of it is the lie of, no, I absolutely did not sleep with this woman, this child is not mine, becomes his reality distortion field.
Oh, that's a really good interpretation of that too. Yeah, easily I could see that.
As opposed to something like Beat It or some of the other previous songs, which are so simple. This one's got a little more flavor to the lyrics. He's talking around things as opposed to directly stating them. And I think that's what drags me in a little more.
So then what do we say about human nature?
This feels like it should be some old white dude crooning in a bar somewhere. It's fine.
That's it? Oh, wow.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about human nature.
So I guess I'm going to have to take it from there then, because I've got a lot more to say.
I'll disagree with you. I mean, that's what I'm good at.
I have to say that Human Nature was probably my favorite song of the album for a very long time. The combination of that beautiful guitar work with that very interesting synth line up in the high notes there. I mean, just this combination of things. His vocal on top of that is really sweet too.
It's a very pretty song, Jeff.
It's really pretty. I'm now, characteristically of me, I am sort of hung up on very pretty things, and so, especially as a kid, so I could definitely see why I was more interested in this track. Lyrically, I have problems. I enjoy that. It's kind of the thing where it's like, you said it with Beat It, where it's sort of like lyrically, you're like, oh, come on, really? But musically, or there's other things about it that really make it one of your favorites. In the case of Human Nature, I really take offense to the term human nature to mean something other than an optimistic view of what humans actually are. Because in the song Human Nature, he's talking about, oh, I can't just sit at home. I need to go out. I need to experience life in the city. He's specifically talking about the big apple here, right? If the city is an apple, then let me take a bite, right?
Sure. Yeah, that's that subtlety that's not so subtle. It's like, yeah, we get it.
So he goes out, he finds a girl who likes the way he stares. I don't know, I find that kind of creepy, but whatever. He ends up in bed with this girl, we think, because, touch on the shoulder. Even though she seems to be still interacting with him, his eyes are on the street. He's ready for the next thing. This song is about the thrill of the hunt. That, to me, is not human nature. And I really don't like that mentality of, oh, yeah, if something happens bad to you because someone did something wrong to you, that's human nature.
In our political climate where we have people in power dismissing things as that's just the way it is, that's just how boys are. Yeah, this is some BS here, dude.
Absolute BS. That is not human nature. That is just, again, the nature of a scumbag.
Yeah, you're just being a dick.
You're being a dick.
Cop to being a dick. You're being a dick. You are a dick.
Thank you, Mike. Exactly.
I'm not you, Jeff.
No, of course. He's like pointing to me as he's saying this.
Right.
Musically, though, I do feel like I'm swept up so much in the melody. The verse is very uplifting. It's actually kind of smooth. It's not as heavy.
It's an uplifting sound contrasted against really, I like living this way. I like loving this way. No, stop being the way you are. You're actually kind of a terrible person, and your human contact is not good or effective or respectful.
It's actually funny you say that, because I think back to what Steve Porcaro said. What I really enjoy about his story is how I believe it was his 4-year-old daughter went up to him and said that this boy came up to me and hit me. Why did he hit me? And here's Steve Porcaro having to tell his 4-year-old daughter, I mean, maybe he likes you, and that's how they show affection.
Yeah.
Which funny enough, that's not like this random thing he came up with. That's actually
that's true.
Well documented.
Yeah, little boys don't know how to process the feelings they have, and
so they hit you. But but I mean, I thought that was way more interesting than what the lyrics turned out to be.
Yeah, because when you bring that up to an adult scale, it's just creepy and weird.
He's playing the guitar melody to an interview where I was watching a video on YouTube. I'll make sure to link it. Very, very interesting how he comes up with the idea for the song. And he did it as he was quitting Toto, because they weren't going to perform the song. If you listen to Toto 4 before coming into this album, you can see right away that no, there's no way Toto's performing this. But Michael Jackson, yeah, I could definitely see Michael Jackson doing it. And of course, I think he does it brilliantly with his vocal performance here. All right, p.y.t.
Yeah, so we're back in the disco, we're back in the funk. It's a cute song. It's a fun song. It's more of the I'm cool, girls are cool.
I like to write notes or obsessions, as I've talked about in the first episode about these things, and we've been going through a ton of my obsessions. And this is where in the album my obsessions stop.
Where it stops, yeah.
It's where it stops. Though granted, I do want to say that I think it's pretty cool that in the when we hear from the actual p.y.t's, it's Janet and LaToya.
Right.
That's kind of cute.
A little cute bit of music trivia there, yeah.
I swear to you, I hear LaToya more than Janet, because they're really subtle. But
I think that's the point of it, is you don't want to distract from Michael.
In general, I know a lot of people who love this track. I'm not one of those people.
I wouldn't say I love it. I really like the song. I think by this point in the album has taken a turn in musical styles that it's tough to bring it back to this.
And especially considering how serious Human Nature was, right? I mean, this is not a lighthearted song. And so to lighten the mood, I think you're right. I think p.y.t. does bring that levity at a very good point.
I think it's a great place for it, and I think it's the wrong place for it. It's really tough. I don't really know what else you would do with this song. I don't think you put it back to back with Startin' Something, because then you have things of the same musical style right next to each other. It would feel a little repetitive there, a little redundant there. So do you spread them out to virtually opposite ends of the album? I guess you kind of have to do that.
I would say so, especially if you're going to tie it in with the previous album. Right, because this sounds like something that is an offshoot of Off the Wall.
I think this more so than Startin' Something. This sounds like the previous album. You get that do-do-do-do-do, and it just, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of fun. When I would get to this point in the album as a kid, that would be the fun part of the album, because you have that, cute little synthesizer thing going on and that little wiggle at the end of it. I really love that. Yeah, it's got some interesting parts to it. I just don't feel like it does much more than that. And the fact that it got to, the top 10 as a single, I mean, that shows just how good everything else is about the track.
That's a weird thing, is that when you're talking about this album, a song that's just okay is still a phenomenal song and arms and legs above everything else in the scene. Well, is it?
Let's talk about the last track. I don't even have it in my notes. I can't even tell you what the name of the song is. I find it to be, if we have to do this comparatively, I think this is the worst track on the album.
This is easily the weakest link. I think that's why it's at the end. I don't think that's a great place for it. If you wanted to construct a real track listing, and we're going to have this conversation, that's where we're going right after this. It's another sweet song, inoffensive song, but this is absolutely the weakest link on the album. There's just nothing to it, man.
Just for the sake of everyone out there listening, we're talking about The Lady in My Life.
There'll be no darkness tonight. Lady, our love will shine. Lighting the light.
I think it sits in its own genre a little too much, and it's not the best cool down from all of the activity we got from the rest of the album. And, we've heard about songs being cut from this because it was too long. So why did this stay? Especially because it just doesn't, now granted, what I think is interesting is the ad-libbing that happens at the end. I feel like the last part of this ends so well.
That's a taste of things to come with Michael Jackson.
Exactly. It's a taste of things to come, and he just does such a good job of playing off of himself. He's doing the background vocal, but he's singing in the foreground.
Yeah.
And he's
kind of like a call and repeat with himself there.
And if you had to give him credit for his vocal style, this is the track where you do it, because he's all over the place. It comes off as legitimate, as endearing, not as stretching or, like human nature being like, oh, I'm hiding some really dark stuff in front of this really light vibrato. No. You're being really harsh.
Or as opposed to The Girl Is Mine, where it's like they try so hard that it just fails.
Exactly.
This is, do we say this is not a try hard song like Girl Is Mine was?
Well, I don't think it's his fault, because vocally he's doing what he can, and especially at the end you hear it. I don't think the material really just stood out as well as the other stuff that we hear on this album, which is hard to say because Rod Temperton is a great songwriter, and he did some of the weakest tracks on the album. He did Thriller, Baby Be Mine, and The Lady in My Life.
Would this be a huge single for someone else, maybe? Not huge, but just a respectable single? Is it just because it's in context with the rest of this album? Is it we can't just have 8 songs on the album, I could throw this one on?
I think the downsides of it are magnified hugely by the fact that this is at the end of 8 other tracks.
It's just another song on the album, though. It's just that tacked on at the end.
But you know what? Let's frame it in this context.
Okay.
This album sold God knows how many. Even the full number, and we're going to get to the reception in a bit, but the full number of albums that this sold is, almost incalculable, because worldwide it went crazy. So the fact that you have an album that sold that much, was that successful, and yet has songs on it that we're saying,
Well, I guess we're at that part of the conversation. We're not talking about this song anymore. We're talking about the point of Thriller as an album. The point of this album, the goal of this album, just like even within the album, songs had goals. For Beat It was supposed to be the Michael Jackson rock song. The goal of Thriller as an album was make amazingly huge, individual, perfect, massive singles. They did it. They got 7, 6, 5 amazing, maybe like 5 amazing ones on there, and then you got a couple extra, and the last track is also on the album. Jeff, let's talk about that, because if that's the goal of the album, it is a concept album and it executed its concept perfectly. I don't think every album, though, has to be a concept album in terms of consistent lyrical or emotional themes to and fro throughout the album. I don't think you need to do that. So Thriller accomplished what it set out to do, which is be a great collection of singles.
I'm glad you bring that up, because I get hung up on albums that don't have some kind of a thematic concept in lyrical sense. And you're right, there really isn't one here. We kind of get the sense of this is how you deal with fame. Certainly, Want to Be Starting Something shows that.
Billie Jean's got that in there as well.
Billie Jean's got a part of that, right?
You got the just typical boys and girls love song thing going on here and there throughout a bunch of the songs.
Yep.
Even into Thriller, like we were talking about. And this is the thing that blows my mind, is that Thriller as an album is the perfect album for individual song sales in the digital age in 2017.
Yes, it's
so out of time.
So, I mean, but we still have that argument today of is the album dead and are singles the way to go for
Thriller
everything?
was already a dead album when it arrived. And that sounds like the weirdest thing to say, because it wasn't an album. It was a singles collection.
But I think that's where, when you dive into the meta of Thriller, you kind of lose the perspective that, look, this was huge. This is the most successful album of all time, regardless of all of the setbacks that it has. And it just has to do with the fact that, whether you agree or disagree with our opinions of the tracks, it's hard to debate millions and millions of albums sold. And you can chalk that up to the excellent marketing and certainly the great luck that Michael Jackson had in the projects that he chose and just all the right steps he was making.
Michael really advocated for himself in this album here, and I have to give him credit for that.
Yeah, we absolutely do. I mean, that's just astonishing that this sold as much as it did with the setbacks that we, assumedly talk about. Track listing wise, I feel like the order of these songs, I mean, how do you order an album of singles?
Here's my perhaps controversial opinion. I think Thriller as an album needs to end with Thriller, the song, because I think it's a great summation of the album. Like, he's a little bit cheeky in the way he's talking about things, which fits in with Billie Jean, but nowhere. It's like 10% of that level. But it's also just a song about a boy and a girl, with Baby Be Mine, Girl Is Mine. The other 8 songs have mine in the title. No, I'm just totally kidding there. But I think it's a perfect encapsulation of this album from a lyrical standpoint, from a production standpoint, just that amazing groove to the song. I think that's where you need the album to end. It was never going to end there, because Thriller as a song was just, it's too good. You have to put it earlier in the album. We don't live in the digital era where people are going to pick here and there. They're going to start at the beginning and go their way to the end. So let's play in this space a little bit. If you move Thriller as a song to the end, where do you get those palate cleansers, those moments of relief, like The Lady in My Life? Can you just move Thriller and everything else works perfectly?
Not really. And the reason why is because you then go into Beat It or Billie Jean on one side. And let's not forget that this went straight to vinyl.
Yep.
So you had to consider
B-side track 1, yeah.
Yeah. So when you're ending a side, I mean, especially when we look at older albums, this is a really good thing to focus on when we switch between albums of a modern era as compared to albums of a previous era, where sides were such a big thing, and you had to end that side with something stellar before going to track 1 of side B.
Right, because it's going to take someone a moment to get up and change it. You got to leave them wanting more, but feeling satisfied at the same time.
Right, lead into the next.
Yeah, you got to have a cliffhanger.
Right, and so that's why I feel like Thriller did a decent job where it is, even though, and I've been reading some of the older record reviews of Thriller as well, and it was almost unanimous that Thriller kind of kills the momentum, because The Girl Is Mine coming after Baby Be Mine, so we're already on this sort of soulful trek.
Yeah.
And then here we are with Thriller coming out of nowhere with this huge anthemic thing and like all the stuff and sound effects or whatever.
Right, man. So you can't go from The Girl Is Mine to Beat It. That's way too much of a jarring feeling. So, all right, if we consider, let's move Thriller to the end, do we move p.y.t up after The Girl Is Mine? Is that still too much thematic similarities among things that at least starts to change the music back a little bit? But then do you have the disco and the funk still only 3 tracks away from each other. Maybe that doesn't work. Do you move Human Nature up after The Girl Is Mine to get some strange levity after the total jovial banter between people? I don't know, man. I don't know how you rearrange 9 singles like this.
I feel like because of the modern age with the ability to playlist, I would easily reorder this.
Yeah.
And I would try that because I feel like you've got a good thing going there. And we already know about how they didn't like the original mix of this album. They had to shorten songs because the vinyl sounded
limitations
tinny.
of the medium, sure.
Exactly. So because of that, we're stuck with the track listing that we have. However, I need to argue this. I've been to plenty of house parties in the 80s where they would play this album. I never really noticed the track list, especially when you're playing this in front of a group of people.
Well, because I think people just talk over Lady in My Life.
This music is so ingrained in our minds at this point that it doesn't matter what order they're in because we know they're good songs. This is the best-selling album of all time. So, a little bit of the reputation kind of comes into that. So, yeah, I guess if you were to reorder it, you could and have a much better result. But at the same time, we kind of understand why it was ordered the way it was.
I think so.
What a monumental task that must have been. You have...
I envy no man involved in the creation here.
Absolutely not. Going into the reception, this thing was released on November 30th, 1982. Michael Jackson was 24 years old. I mean, like, I'm thinking of it now in 35 and just considering, oh my God, how young he was. And he was just so talented. He came in with 4 songs, Billie Jean being one of them. Oh my God, he wrote Billie Jean.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of talent this guy had is just astonishing. And I think that what helps its appeal to everyone. I mean, let's kind of dive into the unfortunate racial connotation that this album has to take.
This is the thing we can't really speak to, but there's enough well-documented history. I want to bring up the David Bowie interview on MTV. Do you remember this one?
I think I know what you're talking about.
He calls him out. He's like, so where's all the black artists? And they have a really unfortunate retort. And this is around the same time that this is all just coming to a head. Thriller's going to be on MTV very, very soon.
That is absolutely true. I want to bring up as well, if you look at the lyrical content of this album, this is some straight up universal messaging.
Yeah, absolutely.
Billie Jean coming out. I mean, first of all, good on the record company, CBS Records. If this story's true, the president of CBS Records told MTV, well, I'm pulling everything unless you play this heavy. What a great decision, because apparently, according to some estimates, the video led to 10 million records being sold.
Which tells you the audience was there and there wasn't much of a problem with it.
The ripe time for the music video to become the art form that it was.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, MTV was in a good spot to blossom in this way. So when you have Billie Jean coming out, and again, universal messaging, right? Michael Jackson isn't saying one way or the other. It's not at that point in his career yet. And you've got this this really soulful, but, still rock-infused semi-ballad of Billie Jean. I mean, you've got something that has absolute crossover appeal. And that video is also really striking in the way that he performs as well. The dancing he does in the video is fantastic. It has a loose concept, but it's still enjoyable with, the lit-up steps that he takes and the photographer chasing him around.
Love it.
I mean, again, focusing on that theme of fame, right? I mean, this is just, it does it so well. It doesn't really follow the trail of the lyrics, granted, but, still, it's an excellent video. The fact that they aired it, it doesn't surprise me that it got the huge reaction that it got, but it really did take something of this caliber and of this popular focus to really open up opportunities for other artists. But apart from that, that's not, I don't feel, where the explosion behind Michael Jackson happened. It was a little bit later, in May, when the Motown 25 performance happened. I watched the performance from when the Jackson 5 go up on stage, and then they do their thing, and it's great. The audience goes nuts.
Right.
And it's so funny because Michael Jackson is kind of restraining himself from doing like all the crazy stuff you see him,
he's about to do.
Yeah, and he's getting into it. I mean, he is so limber. It's crazy. I mean, like the fact that he can throw his head back that quickly and not suffer from whiplash.
Yeah, I don't know how he does it.
I don't know how he does it either. But he does such an incredible job dancing to this, and he's trying not to outshine his brothers. He's kind of failing at that. They do a great performance. He gets his own time in the spotlight, something that was part of the agreement of him showing up in this broadcast. And he says,
those were good songs. I like those songs a lot, but especially I like the new songs.
And, he puts on the hat and the whole dance behind the Billie Jean performance. I mean, stunning.
Jeff, moonwalk.
Now, it's funny that the moonwalk gets such a huge amount of praise now, even though when you look it up online, you can easily find other performers doing it. We hear Marcel Marceau, the famous French mime, did it. Dance choreography from Bob Fosse hinted at it. We even know the name, and of course I didn't write it down, but we know the name of the people that he got it from and who taught it to him. But this is pre-internet.
Right, but it's at that moment with that many viewers, that caliber of a performer, and that is one of the most iconic musical performance moments in history for sure.
And let's not forget the fact that while he has this excellent move, he only does it twice. And this performance, you know, it's what, like a 3.5 minute song, right? He's not going nuts the entire 3.5 minutes. He spaces everything out so well, and he's standing in place at one part, but then he's really moving and being active in another. His timing and his pacing is excellent. That's what really made him such a great performer. It's not that he constantly did these crazy moves, and especially later when his inflections got like a little ridiculous. Here I felt they were more controlled, but later when he gets into the Shimon era and all that, that's where I started to lose it a bit. Here he's not doing that, and things are much more tightened. And he himself may think he didn't do the moonwalk all that well, but I mean, the response to it just completely overshadows any doubts he may have had with just the millions and millions of albums this thing helped to sell. Not to mention the fact that this was like in the middle of them releasing all of these singles from the album. So that performance hits, the sales go up in the millions yet again. At some point they were selling 1 million albums in a week. I mean,
can you imagine?
Absolutely unheard of.
Crazy.
And yet here comes Say Say Say, right? Another great collaboration with Paul McCartney. Here comes the Thriller music video, this mini movie. I mean, there were so many good decisions that were made.
Well, that's what happens when you write an album of singles, that you do such amazing things with a variety of songs all at once.
It's exactly right. So to this day, it is the #1 best-selling album worldwide. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment.
It's like far and away above.
Do you have anything, Mike, that you can think of that would be the next thing that you might want to check out after listening to this album?
He set out to do it, but he accomplished it. Justin Timberlake. You know, Michael Jackson set out to make an album of singles. He accomplished it. Justin Timberlake set out to be Michael Jackson. He accomplished it. He's got the range. He's got the talent. Didn't he grow up to just be a cool dude? He's funny. He's talented. I'm so glad that Justin Timberlake is not an absolute asshole.
I really appreciate how soulful he can be as well.
He's got a great voice. He's got an ear for production. And yeah, that all came out of Disney into NSYNC, into his, you know, we're talking about 3 pillars of a career here. Justin Timberlake is in number 3 here himself. I think that's where you got to go.
So when I talk about further listening, this was a hard task because you could go in, like you said, millions of directions.
You could go backward, you could go forward, you could go around the same era. It's tough.
Apart from Bad being the obvious next choice for me.
Can I throw Rhythm Nation in there again?
Ooh, yes, please do. Rhythm Nation's excellent.
We're starting to get into New Jack Swing there, which I absolutely adore as a subgenre there. Janet's talking about social justice right from the start there. That's a topic that Michael's going to go in and out of through the years and through the albums. But I think she's got the same kind of messages there. But I think that's also maybe a decent place to go to.
Yeah, Janet Jackson, Rhythm Nation, 1814.
And that's really interesting, contrasting Quincy Jones with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis there.
Oh, another great producing team. Yeah, I'm going to bounce off that because talking about another excellent pop person, though granted, this person deserves a ton more credit. And I am looking forward to talking about this person on the podcast at some point. Her name is Janelle Monáe. She is incredible. She kind of follows the same influences as Michael Jackson, besides also having Michael Jackson as an influence for herself. You could definitely attribute her style to him as well as James Brown. But Janelle Monáe is an incredible performer, and she has an incredible vocal range, and her take on making an album is to have a concept or a story behind it, and I super appreciate that. And I mean, she's got such good music coming from this concept. If you listen to Tightrope or Cold War, there's such really good tracks that she has. She just takes it conceptually to a whole new level, but you can see the elements of Michael Jackson in her performance. And if you haven't seen her before, I would absolutely recommend you go there next. Definitely within the R&B soul pop realm, but she just does it with so much talent that I feel she deserves a lot more credit. And we will be definitely talking about the Arc Android in a future episode at some point.
That's so tough. He influenced so many people, but there's really nothing that touches Michael Jackson. I'm really tempted to say like, well, Prince, because 1999 Purple Rain kind of surround this, and there's a lot of the same kinds of issues and thoughts within the lyrics there in some of the songs, but that's not really appropriate of a comparison, but I think to get a sentiment of the time, maybe you want to listen to him.
And I think that Purple Rain, especially coming out in 1984, another huge album with a film attached to it in this case.
Right.
I mean, yeah, his influence certainly stretches way beyond his years in this case. So then other names that I can say that are easily influenced by him, Rihanna, definitely, just due to the fact of her using a sample. Lady Gaga, I can absolutely see in her performance, her video, her emphasis on music video.
Yeah.
I think definitely attributed.
In an era where that was already dead, she insisted on the massive video.
And it worked in her favor, I think.
Yeah.
And then we have other artists like The Weeknd, for example, where if you listen to The Weeknd, his voice is, I mean, astonishingly similar to Michael Jackson's. And Michael Jackson crosses over into different genres as well. I mean, in hip hop, we got Kanye West and Kendrick Lamar who are dropping hints at Michael Jackson in their lyrics. So absolutely, you could say he's a huge influence in that style of music. I also want to bring up, by the way, just an excellent podcast that I was listening to in researching this album and Michael Jackson as a performer, and that is Moonwalk Talks. This podcast is hosted by this guy named Jenkins. He's a rapper. He's also I would say he's an aficionado of Michael Jackson music and stories about his life, of course. It's so good. He does a huge amount of research, and he's doing episodes, I'd say, every couple months. He was a big influence to me when I was coming up with my notes for this review because he did such a great job in humanizing Michael Jackson and giving us some of the motivations behind some of the most controversial things that he did, and really also providing some very interesting samples and research in regards to Thriller the song. And so I want to make sure I want to shout out Moonwalk Talks here. Please definitely go check it out. It is fantastic. That was a really good podcast to listen to.
I just pulled it up in Overcast. I haven't listened to it yet, so I can't speak to it the way you have, but the first thing I'm going to is episode 17, Starlight. I see what he did there with the original concept for the song there, the story of Thriller. So episode 17 was from October last year. I'm downloading it right now.
So I think that's everything we have to say about this album. We've kind of exhausted all the notes that we have. Mike, is there anything that you want to say in addition?
It's hard to approach an album of singles with a review as an album. I hope we even remotely accomplished what we set out to do. We had a mission here, which was to reboot this podcast in the way that you wanted to approach this podcast and approach the way that you reviewed albums. You invited me along for the ride. I appreciate that. This was the perfect place to do it. So that's our review of Thriller by Michael Jackson. Always absolutely 150% interested what you have to say about the albums we review. So join the discussion on our subreddit. Leave a comment on the YouTubes, or you can even kick us an old-fashioned email. Yes, we will read your email. feedback@lofidelity.info.
Next month on Low Fidelity, we are going to analyze and review the self-titled 1970 album from John Prine and discuss the role of artists getting involved in politics. Until then, thank you for listening to Low Fidelity, and we'll see you again in a couple weeks.